So one thing that I've been really happy about, and you'll have seen me talking about it both on here and on Twitter for the last few days, is the latest poll that came out that showed the Green Party only 2 points behind second place on 15% in the polls, 2 points behind the Labour and Tories as an insurgent voice on the left of politics that's coming up to challenge reform. No longer we are being seen as a party of protest. We are winning seats, both in councils, and of course we have more MPs than we've ever had. And this is the highest that the Green Party has ever polled in a poll in the UK on terms of Westminster voting intention. A real momentous moment, which can only seemingly go up as our membership goes up and as Zach's prominence in British politics increases, given the fact that he's basically the only person in frontline politics other than Nigel Farage that has kind of a basic level of charisma. Clearly, Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer, they don't have either of those things, right? So this poll was super interesting, and I'm not particularly surprised, and I don't think viewers at home will be particularly surprised to know that a lot of the surge in Green Party support comes from young people. Young people seem to be the people who are mostly driving the Green support. So I'm going to bring up the poll here that shows the internal poll within the specific polls, which is called Find Out Now. They're quite reform friendly in terms of their methodology, but they both give a pretty good explanation as to why they think people are undercounting reform votes in the mainstream pollsters. So always worth taking it with a pinch of salt, but it definitely gives us an idea of direction of travel. So if you look at the crosstabs here for the latest poll that came out, and we can see here that the Green Party are winning with 32% of 18 to 29 votes. It's basically the Zoomer demographic. Some young millennials, but mostly Zoomers here. 32% for the Greens, Reform on 20, and then Labour now in third amongst this demographic on 19%. Although broadly you do see that the actual right-wing parties don't have a particularly large foothold in the Zoomer vote. As much as people are trying to say that they do, they don't seem to have, and the Greens really do have a pretty large plurality of the young vote in this poll. Worth pointing out, I've brought up the weeks before. So if you can see here, this is from the 1st of October, the other one's from the 8th of October. This one had the Greens on 11%. Again, it shows that the Green Party support very high amongst 18 to 29, although Labour was slightly higher, so Labour support appears to have moved to the Greens, at least by this pollster. If you look at this one from the previous week as well, 24th of September, and you'll see the same thing, 26% support for the Greens, highest amongst the 18 to 29 group. So the Zoomer support for the Greens is incredibly high amongst young people, okay? The concern people will have, though, is that one thing that's been very true about young people in this country, especially for the past 25, 30 years, is that young people's participation in general elections has been very low. Young people are not high propensity voters, and the fact that not only are young people a smaller demographic, because older people were from generations where the birth rate was extremely high, they're a very large voting cohort. Young people have grown up in a world with low birth rates, so they have a much smaller demographic cohort amongst young people in this country. They also vote in lower numbers. They also do not have a high propensity to vote. So that really handicaps them when it comes to the ability to be able to sway politics, to sway politicians, and to get politicians to look after their needs. Because if you don't vote, and you're also a small cohort, there's no point in pandering to you. You might as well pander to the large cohort of older people who do turn out to vote. That's always been a problem for youth politics in this country, is the turnout amongst the youth, which has been a real problem. There was a problem for Corbyn, right? And so far as Corbyn energised young people, did see an increase in turnout, but not a big enough increase in turnout to get it to the level of everybody else, or to make up for the fact that the demographic cohort is much, much, much smaller in terms of their electoral salience, because of the fact that we are living longer, we are an ageing population, and of course the birth rates were higher before than they are now. There is, however, some good news, chat. I have some good news. We may not have fixed the birth rate issue. What we may have done, and I do not know how this has happened, why this has happened, or if it's just a quirk of the methodology and sampling profile of this particular pollster, but we may have turned it around. We may have turned around the problem with youth turnout in this country, because Find Out Now also poll likelihood to vote amongst the people who they survey in their polls, right? They also survey likelihood to turn out. if you look at the 18 to 29 age group here, if you look at definitely or very likely to vote, that's 73%. The only group in the entirety of who gets polled here, the higher propensity to vote on these two top answers, is a 75 plus vote. The 18-29s, very, very likely to vote. Very, very likely to vote. Which is pretty significant. That is a pretty significant number of people. Which is much, much, much higher than just the next demographic up, which is only at 61%. So it's millennials that have a very low propensity to vote, and Zoomers have a very high propensity to vote, much higher than even Generation X. And just so that you know, this is not just an aberration in this particular poll done on the 8th of October. But if you look at the previous weeks, it shows the same thing for turnout. 71%, which is, again, more than everybody else apart from the 65 plus here. And you go the 24th of September, the same is true. 74%, 74%, 65 plus here. So it's similar levels of turnout, if not higher levels of turnout, than the 65 plus amongst young people. Does anybody have any theories as to why this is? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I understand that my channel is usually here to be able to read into this data and give you some kind of thesis as to why this is. I genuinely do not know what has caused the younger generation, the Zoomers of this country, to have suddenly decided to have such a interest in politics. I'm so glad to see that these high propensity voters also really like to vote Green. This is going to lead to a lot of big swings, especially in university towns, if they've got so high propensity to vote, and they're going to make up such a large demographic of those seats that make up these university towns or these university cities, or these areas with high student populations. They're going to be likely to vote Green. And it's first past the post, right? All the Greens need to do is win the students, and they get across the line with a split vote with the other parties. This means a lot if this comes to pass, if these trends continue of young people, high salience to vote and high salience to vote Green. Radicalized by TikTok? Potentially. Potentially. Brexit and the pandemic, certainly becoming of age during the pandemic will make you very politically engaged. We saw the level to which the pandemic led to political engagement in the United States, where young people did turn out in large numbers to be able to elect Joe Biden, and the turnout was higher than any election in American history when it took place during the pandemic to elect Joe Biden with the largest number of votes ever. In fact, it's the only election in the last century where the winning candidate in the United States got more votes than the number of people who didn't vote who were eligible to do so. So the pandemic definitely increased voting turnout. So people who grew up and had their halcyon days marred by pandemic politics really are going to be more politically engaged than those who weren't. Again, I'm willing to hear other ideas as to why this is, but leave your thoughts below in the comments in future. I'm very interested to know. I think another stat that's also really encouraging about young people in this country as well, right? Not only do they have a high propensity to vote, and they have a very high propensity to vote for the Green Party. If you go to this tab that includes don't knows, i.e. people who are unsure of who they're going to vote for, 18 to 29s are the lowest. They are the lowest in terms of not knowing who they're going to vote for. They are so politically engaged that they know full well who they are politically aligned with. They're not taking any shit. They're not out there choosing between different parties, right? They have a very clear idea of who they want to vote for, and they know who represents those kinds of politics. Because even if you look at the oldest people, who are usually very clear in their voting intentions as well, and what their material interests are, Zoomers still the lowest in terms of don't knows. They know full well that they want to vote for the Green Party. They're already sold. They don't need to think about who they're going to vote for. That's encouraging for us if they have cemented their political choices so heavily right now. Very, very interesting. And again, just going to go to the other polls previously to get an idea that it's similar. And this one also has it on the same level as 65 pluses here in this particular poll from the first. And from the 24th, you can see that on 30%, again similar to the 65 pluses, although not quite as low as the 75 pluses, still much lower than the next three age demographic breakdowns that Find Out Now have in their polling analysis. Really good news. This is really good news for us. But again, has everyone just missed this? Has everyone just kind of missed this in the mainstream media? I've not seen anybody talking about these specific kinds of figures. Again, maybe it's all just a quirk of the sampling methodology of Find Out Now, or the way in which that they choose participants in their surveys. Maybe it's all down to a methodological quirk for Find Out Now's methodology. But I don't think that it is. I don't know how you would be able to have this consistently over and over and over again if there wasn't at least some truth to the polling numbers that we're seeing here. And again, it's not just one poll, it's poll after poll after poll. Also very interesting and funny, just as a little aside here, whilst we're here, looking at the 18 to 29 groups, Tories on 9%. People are wondering why the Tories are failing, why the Tories have completely screwed the pooch. Well, again, they screwed over their own voters, and they've spent literally no time at all trying to court new, younger voters. They kept assuming that they could just win the votes of older pensioners and homeowners forever, and they forgot they needed to cultivate the votes of young people who they've been screwing through policy because they previously, before now, weren't high propensity voters. They thought that they could ignore young people. Well, now your party has died forever. Well done, Tories, you love to see it. Couldn't have wished it upon a bigger group of massive arseholes. I mean, literally, you're absolutely right, Svetlana, that there was a Times article about young Tories wanting to win over their peers. And literally, they included friend of the show, Charles Amos, the guy who went on GB News to defend making incest legal. So the Tories aren't sending their best. Let's be real. But again, this is just some interesting things that I'm seeing from these polls. If you have some ideas as to why this might be, or you have some responses and you think that I'm wrong, I am willing to be proven wrong in the comments. This is just an interesting quirk that I saw in this data, and I was interested in people's opinions on what this means for the future of politics. But if it's true that we're suddenly seeing a huge rise in youth engagement in politics, all I can say is thank fuck. Because whilst I love my boomer viewers, and I think that the older generation have done plenty of good things for this country, my God, have they had a monopoly on political discussion in this country for far too long. And young people have been screwed over by governments for far too long. And at least some of a sea change in the way in which political policy is made in terms of the generations that it serves will be more than welcome, is quite frankly necessary if we want to fix the quite frankly obliterated social contract this country used to have. Because currently, that social contract, especially passing down a country from the old to the young, does not exist anymore. And only young people's participation in politics will fix that. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.